By the time you're watching this, the Nintendo Switch 2 may have already launched. But even before players have had a chance to power it on, Nintendo is already making headlines for a decision that's raising eyebrows across the gaming world. According to its newly updated terms of service, Nintendo now claims the right to remotely deactivate your console if it detects any form of unauthorized use. This sweeping policy revision directly targets system modification, piracy, homebrew installations, and any other unofficial software, even if you use it for entirely non-malicious purposes. So why is Nintendo doubling down now? What are they trying to prevent? And what can we learn from the original Switch era that led to this aggressive stance? Let's break it down. This is ILT, and if you've got a tech story you would like me to cover, please let me know in the comments. When the original Nintendo Switch launched in 2017, it wasn't long before a major hardware vulnerability came to light. The flaw was located in the NVIDIA Tegra X1 chip and became infamous under the name Fusée-Gillet. This exploit allowed full system access through USB recovery mode, bypassing firmware security entirely. Hackers used it to install custom firmware, emulate retro consoles, and load pirated software. What made it especially problematic for Nintendo was that this was a hardware level flaw. Software updates just couldn't fix it, so the only way forward was to manufacture entirely new hardware revisions. A logistical nightmare. Millions of vulnerable consoles were already sold before Nintendo could intervene, making this one of the most widespread and unpatchable breaches in console history. Nintendo responded decisively and aggressively. They started banning consoles from accessing Nintendo Online-based system telemetry. Even minor modifications such as non-commercial homebrew apps were grounds for suspension. The legal strategy was even more severe. One of the most high-profile cases was against Gary Bowser of the modding group Team Executor. He was sentenced to 40 months in prison and ordered to pay over $10 million in damages. In a post-release interview, Bowser admitted that he'd likely be repaying Nintendo for the rest of his life. This just wasn't legal punishment, it was symbolic. Nintendo wanted to send a message and be clear. Modifying our hardware comes with real-world consequences. Now, as Nintendo gears up for the Switch 2, they've taken preemptive legal steps to avoid a repeat of last generation's loopholes. The new terms of service include language granting Nintendo the right to render a device permanently unusable if it violates the agreement. That including jailbreaking, circumventing DRM, installing unofficial firmware, or tampering with internal files. One of the most controversial changes? The TOS no longer acknowledges regional legal differences. So even if your local law permits modding or backup use, Nintendo's global policy overrides that autonomy. In other words, Nintendo has built a digital kill switch directly into the legal framework of the Switch 2 ecosystem. And it's not just about the software. Nintendo is also changing the physical media landscape. The Switch 2 includes game key cards which no longer contain the full game on the cartridge. Instead, these cards act as digital licenses, as they authenticate the game's ownership and initiate a download from Nintendo's servers. To play the game, the card must be inserted at the time, but the game itself runs off downloaded data. This presents a real concern for preservation. If Nintendo discontinues server support in the future, these game key cards may become entirely non-functional, effectively DRM-locked plastic. This shift undermines the traditional assumptions of physical ownership, creating a somewhat hybrid model where access is granted, not guaranteed. Many gamers assume these rules only apply to pirates, but that's a dangerous misconception. These policies impact ordinary users in subtle, far-reaching ways. Want to back up your save data? Use a third party to stream music? Tinker with accessibility mods for usability? Under the new TOS, that could be considered a violation. Worse still, there's no established appeal process. So if your console is flagged, even incorrectly, there's no clear path to reinstatement. Nintendo serves as judge, jury, and executioner. So this isn't just about IP protection. It's about redefining ownership in the digital age. You paid for the hardware, but the company still decides whether and how you can use it. Nintendo's crackdown is part of a wider movement across the tech industries. A push towards remote enforcement, cloud dependency, and digital licensing over physical control. Gaming is entering an era where content is increasingly ephemeral. When support ends, servers are shut down, or accounts are revoked, access just disappears. And in many cases, there's no legal or technical recourse. The Switch 2's frame rate exemplifies this shift, from product ownership to service-based access, and unless it's challenged, it may become the new normal. So where do you stand? Is Nintendo protecting its ecosystem, or is it going too far? Should companies be allowed to disable the hardware that you've paid hard money for just because you've used it differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you have ever jailbroken a console or been unfairly banned, I want to hear your story.